There's a guy by the name of Matt Larson. I don't know if you heard of this dude.
The name sounds familiar.
He's head of the SOC-P program. He was kind of the author of the SOC-P program for the U.S. Army. He's out at West Point now and runs the combatives program there, but he started there in Fort Benning and kind of putting the combatives program together for the Army. Gotcha. And he tells a story of how this particular entourage of folks came in from the Marine Corps and were kind of, walking into his building, and he was kind of, I guess, introducing them to what was then a very new program. And he asked some questions because you had this high-ranking official, right, within the Marine Corps branch, and then he had all his people with him. And he asked for a show of hands. He goes, like, who's the best runner in this group? And everybody's go, oh, it's, I think he describes it as like Major Longlegs, over there. That dude's the best runner. A guy just like won the Marine Corps marathon, right? And everybody knows that, right? Everybody knows what that is. And then the next question is, well, who's the best fighter in here? And there's crickets. Nobody knows. Who's the best shooter in here? Nobody knows. And his point is like, that's a problem to me, because what that tells me is this institution, this organization values running over fighting and shooting, which when you're looking at what we're supposed to be doing here, those things are equally as important. The only time you're running should be towards the enemy, right? In this case, if we're bridging the gap to law enforcement, like should be running towards whatever the threat is or the incident is or whatever we're talking about here. And when you get there, in his words, and I'm paraphrasing here, with every step you get closer, the fighting and the shooting gets that much more important. Yet, so going back and like, why is running so valued in that particular environment? Is because every day you run, right? And so every day you know who the best runner is, who the worst runner is, and it's very obvious. And nobody wants to be around or touch the guy or the person that's last at everything, because that's not the guy you want standing next to you when the fitness, the fighting, the shooting, and again, in this case, the driving and everything else actually shows up. So there's this social currency being developed in that environment too, and it gets lost when they go out into the quote unquote mainstream of their agency or their department. I guess my point in telling the story or paraphrasing the story, Matt's story, is where are we placing value, and where does it get lost, and where does it get started? But then how does it get lost? Because everybody knows what that is at some point and then forgets about it. So I think about like the objective stuff and then the subjective stuff with this. And again, it blows my mind, when I hear that, a chief, when asked, what do we really value here and how are we measuring that, goes straight to the answer of, well, crime rate's down and, and officer safety is better. However, we're measuring those things. We had less officers get in incidents. We had, less officers hurt. We had, crime rates are down. We all know those numbers can look very, very different based on however they want to provide statistics. But at no point are we ever talking about fitness, right? Like, and how do we evaluate that? Going back to the shooting stuff, like, I don't know how it works in the academy in shedding some light on this, but in your training unit, how do you know who the best shooter is? Like when they come out to train with you?
Oh, we score. And we started the past probably 2 years. We started using hit factor scoring things.
Okay, so that in and of itself is very much different than a lot of agencies work, right?
Yeah,
hit factor scoring.
The qualification is a joke. I literally have a personally owned Glock 17 with an NYPD trigger and no sights on the gun, and I was able to pass our qual. Helen Keller can pass a state qual from any probably state in the United States. So there's measurables and like little competitions we do during in-service training. Okay. And we're currently pushing for not the incentive of maybe somebody gets like an expert badge for their Class A uniform and maybe like an extra day off or something like that. But bosses always like measurable things for data, like you said, crime rates and stuff like that. What I find interesting, I was bouncing around some ideas and some stuff you said, like what changes from academy to after the academy. And I've been diving into psychology a lot recently. Like, why does my brain think certain ways, and why do other people's brains? Like, where do they come to these solutions? And the first thing that came into my head is I remember going through the academy, and it's probably like that for most selection processes, whether it's a SWAT school or academy process, is not only are you trying to be motivated by instructors, your classmates want you to succeed too. So that's part of the process of like building up a class. Like you break them down, build them up. It's just like any boot camp or anything like that. Like there's planned failure. Oh, you guys all suck. Clean up, and you have to run and do burpees and push-ups and everything. And you start to have this like trauma bonding type of thing. And the person who is in last, whoever finished the run first, usually runs to the back of the line and tries to motivate. Hey, let's go, buddy, pushing their back and stuff like that. It happened during my SWAT school. Like I literally had my now teammates like pushing my back because I fucking hate running. It was like it was after like 6 or however many miles we did that day. It was a long day of running. But needless to say, like they came back to get me, and it was motivating. And I was like, yes, I'm not going to let my teammates down. And you find another gear, and you find a way to power through it. Once you graduate, the way our academies work is it's a multi-agency academy. So anybody can come and go from multiple agencies and stuff like that. Maybe in the future we'll have our own in-house. But there's nobody holding you accountable anymore. There's nobody saying, hey, come on, buddy, let's go work out, because you're now a new rookie in a place where, like, luckily our training unit, we still take them to go work out. But once they start FTO, we're pretty hands off. Like we don't have any more real influence on them until they come back for in-service training, or unless they're having an issue that needs to be addressed training wise. But when it comes to like fitness, like, well, go do great things. We kind of just let them go. And that's every agency I've ever heard of. Very few, I would say, ever come back and like, hey, I'd like a workout program. I've gotten that question maybe a dozen times over the past 10 years. Wow. Because I'll offer like, hey, what do you want help with? You're struggling with pull-ups? Here's a good program. Here's whatever you need. But I want to say it's like that with pretty much everything in law enforcement. Like you're taught how to do, you're taught to meet a certain standard of whatever the state requires, whether it's qualifications or the agency's policies. You pass those standards, and then, all right, big boy rules now. Just don't fuck up and you will be okay. So the only way to really fix that, I would say, is maybe the culture in certain things. What's worked for our agency is the culture. So like I said, we're mixing in a bunch of practical competition style shooting things. And now we've got more guys than ever going to competitions and like doing stuff like that. And it's fun. Guys are enjoying it. You can do things like that in all realms of law enforcement. Like, hey, like our combatives program has grown exponentially, like far beyond anything I've ever seen. Of like, guys are all trying to get blue belts and keep going and going and going. Like one of my best friends, Drew, I think he's now a blue belt. He recently got a month or two ago, a couple months ago. Like he had never done jiu-jitsu ever, really. He's a Navy guy. Was a good cop. He loves chasing bad guys, and he got bit by the bug, and now he does jiu-jitsu like 4 or 5 days a week. And he loves jiu-jitsu and just keeps doing it. And now he's like one of our combatives instructors. And all it took was getting the right motivation and us just building this curriculum. And we've got more people that are blue belts now than ever before in the agency. But it was that little cultural bug, a little bit of social peer pressure. Or not, I wouldn't say peer pressure, just pure motivation, maybe.
Yep. Okay.
Stuff like that. And it can, again, be multifaceted in multiple ways. But once they like cut that umbilical cord after the academy, it's kind of on you. Majority of agencies don't offer the resources that I would say we've learned to accommodate, because we weren't always this way. Like I said, I've been in my agency over 10 years now. This combatives program didn't exist. The PT program and on-duty workout time that we talked about in the other podcast didn't exist. But over the last, I would say, 3 to 5 years has been a very aggressive progression and evolution for these good things. But I fear we might be the anomaly, and it's not, becoming a widespread practice.